It is 6:30, and we will call the regular meeting of the East Bay Township Board for Monday, October 14th to order. If you will join me in starting the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you wouldn't mind just still standing for just a half a second, I think we'll just take a half a second to recognize that one of our dear colleagues has passed this past month, and so we'll just have a moment of silence for Leslie Couturier. Okay, thank you. And if you knew Leslie, you knew that a moment of silence was not really in her vernacular, but we will sure miss her. Okay, with that, we'll do roll call. Ann?
Walters.
Present.
Lyle.
Here.
Bartlett.
Yes.
M. Cortade.
Here.
S. Cortade.
Here.
And Friend. And it's noted that, I didn't give you a chance to say you were here.
That's fine. I'm
Okay.
here.
And it's noted that Cook is absent and excused.
All right, very good, thank you. With that, we'll take a look at our agenda. We have a review for conflict of interest. On our agenda tonight, we do have typical, actually a very scaled down consent agenda with just board minutes and a couple budget amendments. And we have reports from Grand Traverse County Road Association, Board of Commissioners, and then we'll talk about some engineering projects, Arbutus Lake number 5, the Force Main number 1 for the sewer project, the Parks Commission, Planning and Zoning Department with respect to an introduction to the zoning ordinance and map, and then the assessing department. And we'll talk with our new assessor as well as discuss the computerized assessment role and the record retention policy, and just an introduction for the fiscal year 25 budget. I would ask that under the assessing department, we add, just for a note, SC, Assessing Administrative Specialist. Just want to bring you all up to speed and look for some direction on that. But with that, is there any conflict of interest declared? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support. With the assessing administrative?
Yes,
Okay,
sorry.
awesome,
With
that's
the
okay.
addition of assessing.
Okay, a motion by Bartlett, supported by Walters. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? Okay, we'll move forward with that agenda. We have public comment right now. It's time for public comment. If anyone would like to address the board, you are welcome to come up and please introduce yourself and let us know your perspective. How are you this evening?
I'm very good, thank you.
Well, good. What's your name and address?
My name is Jeff Geiger, and I live at 225 Cross Country Trail. And I've been working on land division on our property, and I just wanted to get a little clarification. I tried with Claire and Bill. Bill is ill today. I talked to him on the phone briefly, but they really didn't give me a definitive answer. They suggested I came here and ask. And I'm curious if they're going ahead and doing the splits at a 40,000 square foot like they are now, or are they changing that to 2 acres? I don't know if this is the time, but we're right in the middle of that. And I'm working with the Mitchell Associates, but they don't have everything to you yet, and I just don't want to have a big deadline and miss that. So I'm curious about that. I don't know if I can get a quick answer from that.
So you're in the ag district?
No, we're in Lakes area.
In the Lakes area?
Yeah, it
Okay.
was ag at one time, but then they, kind of pulled that away from us, and
Okay.
now
Well-
it's classified as Lakes area.
Thank you for being here. Let us go through the agenda, and can you leave your name and number with
Yep.
Ann, and we'll be sure to be in touch with you tomorrow.
That would be awesome, but it's not a deadline today where you're doing that, because they couldn't, you're not adopting the new,
No,
Okay,
we
'cause-
can't adopt.
I didn't think so, but they weren't sure of that. I asked them that specific question today. Now that Bill or Claire knew that, so that's why I'm here. But
Okay.
I sure can wait. Thank you.
That sounds good, thank you. Any other further public comment? Okay, not seeing any other public comment. We will move on to correspondence and reports. You do have some correspondence and reports in your meeting packet, plus you do have the East Bay Ambulance report on your desk. In this month's packet, we have the Mitchell Creek Source Tracking Project. You'll remember that's a project that we funded, not in whole, but in part with Garfield Township and the city of Traverse City. And then the Watershed Center had a large grant to use some of those funds with, and they did some analysis because the E. coli obviously had put the Mitchell Creek watershed on the not endangered species list, what am I talking about? Impaired stream list. And so some of those, it was a long study. You'll remember, you can see it goes all the way back to 2019. So it's kind of interesting to see some of the results from that. And as studies go, sometimes they beget more analysis too. We have the Grand Traverse County Road Commission weekly updates that we've received, the treasurer's report, supervisor's meeting log, and then as well, the most recent of the other board meetings with the township. So those are for your reference, and if you have any further questions, you can reach out to those who've submitted those. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda, and I understand that there is some change on the consent agenda. Sue, do you want to go over that?
Certainly. So do you want me to just say the changes, or did you want me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the receiving fund, if you strike out checks number 2948, 29 through 2951, those were presented last month. The dollar amount also strike through, that was last month's number. This month's numbers are 2952 through 2953 for a total of $30,805.14. And down at the total amount paid, that number was not reflected correctly. That number should be $512,130.13.
Okay, just following up from Tracy's question earlier, is that the correct total then?
It is.
Okay.
Is the number down below did not.
Was
get
wrong.
changed.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, so with that, does anybody from the board, would they like, oh,
I think
Ann, do you want to go
would
over
like
the,
consent.
I could.
there you
The
go.
purpose of the consent agenda is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one board motion without discussion. Any member of the board, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent agenda be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent agenda, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single board action adopting the consent calendar. We have the minutes, September 9th, 2024, regular meeting, recommend approval. From the general fund, check numbers 18979 through 19081 in the amount of $189,414.33. Check numbers 18998 and 18999 were voided, and 18914 was previously paid. From the emergency fund, check numbers 5721 through 5757 were paid in the amount of $27,250.25. Receiving fund, check numbers 2952 through 2953 were paid in the amount of $30,805.14. Escrow fund, check numbers 2033 through 2040, paid in the amount of $30,583.96. There were no checks from the roads SAD fund. There were 3 payrolls. The first one, August 25th through September 7th, check number 7804 through 7809, totaled $78,995.64. Payroll dated September 8th through September 21st, check number 7810 through 7814, totaled $75,432.93. And an hourly wage correction for a part-time paramedic was also processed that same day. Payroll dated September 22nd through October 5th, check number 7815 through 7822, and the total was $79,647.88. Total payroll, $234,076.45, and total amount paid, $512,130.13. You have proposed budget adjustments, BA 2024, 07, 08, and 09.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody from the board like anything removed? Would any member of the public like anything removed? Okay, we'll bring that back to the board. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda? Don't all jump at once. I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there support?
Support.
Oh, my goodness. Friend moved, Walters supported. Any further discussion? We'll do a roll call vote. Ann?
Friend?
Yes?
Walters?
Yes.
M. Cortade?
Yes.
S. Cortade?
Yes.
Lyle?
No.
Bartlett?
Yes.
We're good.
Okay, very good, thank you. We will move on to business before the Township Board. First on our agenda is the Grand Traverse County Road Commission. Dan Watkins is here. Hi, Dan, how are you doing? Good, thanks for being here tonight. And I just want to thank you as well for your organization for hosting a meeting for the Scout Camp and Traeger Road residents on that proposed SAD. It was very much appreciated.
Yeah, I heard it well. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. Representative Broth wanted to talk about some roads that exact same time, so I wasn't able to make it over there, but Larry said it went pretty good. So.
Yeah.
Not a lot tonight. Kind of going back a little bit here since I've been, but we did have our second brine in August. Got that finished up. And believe it or not, we're still doing our second mow, trying to get out there and finish up some mowing for this year, trying to get some of that grass laying down so when the snow does come, it just blows right off the side of the road, doesn't collect up there. One of the big projects we just finished up was catch basin cleaning. We rented a vac truck. We actually cleaned 800 catch basins out. So we have a huge pile of material out back behind the shop right now, letting that dry out, and we're going to get it tested for any contaminants. So that was a pretty big project. I was amazed we had 800 catch basins, within the county. So just finished up our last asphalt paving project for the year. That was South and West Long Lake project. So that is back open if you're on that side of town. We applied for a couple of safety grants this year. We did apply for one for the 3 Mile and Potter, kind of like we did for Garfield and Potter, just to have them take a look at it, see if there's a possibility of maybe putting another roundabout in there or something like that. Unfortunately, we got denied on that one, so we were hopeful. We did get approved for one. We applied for a few throughout the county. The one we did get approved for was Cedar Run and Gray, and that was just for a safety study grant. We got $20,000 on that one, so they're taking a look at that. A lot of concern with that one with 72 and 22 roundabout going in there next year. They're saying that's where all the traffic's going to flow. So, next one I hate to mention, I even heard on the radio they're talking about maybe a little bit of it tomorrow. We're getting ready for winter and snow, so salt, sand, all that good stuff, getting that on site. Our blade order's already in. Blades are super hard to get sometimes, so we're always glad when our blade order gets in time. So we got our blades and our bolts. The shop is frantically putting all of our trucks together. We got a little over half the fleet 100% ready to go for winter. So the other half are still trying to finish up some projects. Our goal is usually by November 1, all of our trucks 100% switched over, and we gave up on any summer or fall projects. So we're getting close on that. Our new Kingsley building, that's coming along really nicely. We actually just moved our sand in there, and we're going to start moving salt in there tomorrow. So we'll have our salt and sand in the new location. The building itself still needs a little bit. We're hoping to be in there in December, and then that's when we move in those 2 additional routes I talked about, I think last time I was here down there. So that's about all I have for tonight, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay. Any questions? Glenn?
I got a question not on your report. Holiday Road. When I tell you the valley, does that make sense to you? We break down the hill past Vale Drive. Vale Drive's out near the end.
Trying to picture past the ski hill.
Past the ski hill about, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile. You past Maplewood, it's flattened out, and then it drops into the valley, makes a sharp right there.
Okay.
Okay, the valley part, and I mean, I can tell you about the rest of it, but that doesn't concern me as much as there's big cracks between the 2 lanes and water sets in there. Now, I know this has been brought up long before you were in this position. I'd talked to them. And both inside corners, when you break into the valley, the inside corner, and then when you hit, instead of going up Columbine, you make the left, that inside corner is all breaking up because it's low. And people that can't drive on the road, they gotta get into the dirt. But my real concern is some seal coating or something, rather than watching the rest of that road break up like that, especially that center. And for some reason, when they striped it this time, and I don't know if somebody talked to them, but they quit on both ends of where the split is. And I thought, well, they're gonna come out and fix it, which made sense, but nobody showed up yet, so I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into that one. I don't know where we're at with looking for that for a chip seal possibly.
Huh?
I don't know where we're at. We might be looking at that one for a
Okay.
chip seal. I'll have to check when we get back.
Yeah.
When we get back to the shop.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dan? No? Okay, thank you. Hi, Lisa.
Sorry about that. You know, the whole day job, conflict with the night job. Apologize. I'm sure Dan handled everything. One of the things the commissioners have just been pointing out is highlighting a press release that we had come out about campaign signs. I don't know if Dan, did you mention it? I didn't. All right, that's a good one to mention this time of year. We all know how much those campaign signs cost, and so it is frustrating when you see them gone or people think they're stolen. But many times they're just sitting next to the dumpster at the road commission. If you place your or your campaign signs in the road commission right away, they oftentimes are taken. And you may have supporters of yours that asked for signs, and they call you up and say, you know, it was stolen or whatever. Well, I just want to remind everybody who pays money for signs to take a look. We keep them for, I think, 30 days next to the dumpster. So just make sure you look there before you replace a sign that you don't have to have the cost for. And just a reminder that we never, ever regulate content, but we always regulate placement of signs. It's hard for our guys taking care of the road right-of-ways and the mowing, but also for visibility and issues like that. And that each one of your townships have their own sign ordinances as far as size, so always make sure. It's hard when you're like a county-wide candidate too, because like every township has a different size ordinance, and in one township they might be fine, and in the other they aren't, but they're never okay in the road commission right away, so we just wanted to highlight that this week. And so we had a PR go out, and the Record Eagle did a really great article last Sunday, if you have a chance to look at it. It goes through all of the county road right-of-way rules along with the city streets road right-of-way rules, because they are different. So if you're a countywide candidate, like I said, you would be in the city as well. So that is probably the main thing. We did Dan's evaluation this week. I'm happy to say we are keeping Dan, and Dan is keeping us. So we're really happy about that. The change has been palpable in the last year, and Dan and his team are a big part of that. And on behalf of the board, I know I speak for all of us when we thank Dan for the work he did in picking up some pieces that had fallen in before him. And we're just really happy with him, so we're glad he's happy with us. So we're keeping him.
Did you say there's campaign signs out there? I hadn't seen any.
Yeah, right? For our friends in Peninsula Township, that might be the worst one. Like, sometimes I drive out there and I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, what
It is a
like
change from 2 years ago, because I had contacted the road commission 2 years ago about getting some signs picked up that were in the right of way, and they were not choosing to do that, so.
So what I just
Right.
mentioned about thanking Dan for his job for the last year, like, that's a great example of hundreds of examples I could give you of the change of the road commission in the last year, the receptiveness to both the commissioners and the staff, but also most importantly to the constituents in our township. So we are following through on all of that now, answering phones. There's real people answering phones 5 days a week, and there's always us as well, because these guys are juggling literally 110,000 people that they serve. But you know that you have those of us on the board that represent your township that you can also reach out to as well, so.
Sue?
Just a quick comment. Grand Traverse County Clerk's website shows all of the signed resolutions and ordinances for all of the jurisdictions throughout the county.
Nice.
So for those candidates that are running more than just locally,
Yeah.
they can really
Okay,
quickly
good.
find that information too.
Yeah, because I was really glad that the Record Eagle put that out. It was a well-written, it was a good article, but it is interesting. I don't think a lot of people realize that their sign might just exceed that sign ordinance, and then it'll be taken down by their township code enforcement or road commission, or, depending on where you're at. And so to always check, because your sign could be sitting right there. And also, I should make note, this isn't just about campaign signs. It's about business signs, not-for-profit signs, hunting show this weekend, or yard sales, or any of that stuff. So if you have business signs, a lot of people will give you a discount when you work on their roof, say, if you'll put their sign in your yard and you don't realize you're violating your township sign ordinance by doing that, right? So, yeah, that's a really good point, so we should.
Thanks, Elisa. Does anyone
Thank
else
you.
have any other questions? Okay.
One
Yeah.
comment. Do you guys still have road maps? Because they go out of here, we cannot keep them stocked.
Could we please deliver them to you?
Sure.
Okay.
I've always picked them up, but if you want to deliver, that's great.
I'll actually pick them up, Dan, if you guys want to put some at the front, I'll bring them. We have a joke about this, because in our budget every year, we don't want to approve this line item, but the state of Michigan requires that we spend money printing maps where, Gen Z and the millennials, that not happening. Like, they're not,
Oh, no, they fly.
Oh my gosh,
out
I
here.
love that. No, I will totally
I
pick
went
those up.
through,
But tell Kylie to text me, because I'll forget.
I went through over a case this last year. Yeah.
Okay, we have a lot, and I will personally deliver them to you so that our
Okay, no
staff doesn't
problem.
have to.
I can stop by too.
Okay, thank you. You guys can
Thank you.
figure that one out. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, we will move on to Board of Commissioners. We have Commissioner Nelson here. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing well.
Thank you, nice to see everybody. By my notes, I was just answering a text. Commissioner Rob Henschel he and I are splitting. He's at another meeting tonight, so he said to say hello. And he's going to do that for me at the other meeting. So, a couple things. One, if you drive by Camp Graylick, which is the name, there's a cover-up of the sign that was there, talking about it being your future Grand Traverse County Park. I think that's exciting. John Chase was very anxious about getting that sign changed, so that has been done. It's not a permanent sign, but we've had a lot of comments and feedback from people. Almost all of it has been positive so far, and a lot of people are really interested and want to invest in that park, invest in a way like helping out or doing whatever. So it's been a good thing, and I want to thank you guys for your help and assistance on that whole process. So, good stuff. Today, just before this meeting, I got out of there was a Grand Traverse County, Leelanau County Airport Authority Board meeting where we're talking about the possible growth at the Traverse City Airport. And I'm going to use the word facilities growth because it's not an airport expansion. A lot of people are kind of concerned about the airport growing. The airport isn't growing in size, acreage, of the four corners. It's the facilities that need to be upgraded. So the FAA does not allow you to build, and they participate greatly in the funding of these, build your airport beyond the capacity that you have right now. So, for example, in 2010, there was about 350,000 passengers per year. In 2023, there was 739,000 passengers. So more than double. From 2010 to 2023, we're about 11% ahead of the 2023 numbers, and we're most of the way through the year. So it's a pretty steep growth curve. So kind of the plan is, if you can picture the airport, as you go out into the concourse where you've got the pod where the airplanes are, you're going to turn to the right, and they're going to expand out of a concourse, go down in another pod for airplanes, bigger airplanes. My daughter lives in Denver. She flew here twice this summer, partly for work, because she works for a company in Traverse City, but mostly to see her dad, obviously. Each time when she flew in, a direct flight Denver to Traverse City, she had to wait for a half an hour just to get into the gate. So that's what's happening. There's been times where we have 10 planes waiting for a gate during the busy times. That's the busiest time of year, June, July, and August. So this will help with that, and there's allowing for the bigger planes. That pod was built for more regional jets. The ones we're getting now are the large passenger jets, 737s, 192 passenger type aircraft, as opposed to the smaller we're used to seeing, the 75. So anyway, the vote was made today to start exploring. I don't know how the paper is going to word it tomorrow. We didn't approve the bond. We didn't approve anything today other than Grand Traverse County and Leelanau County have to vote to allow a bond to be issued. The bond will be issued with the full faith and credit of Grand Traverse County because it lies within Grand Traverse County based on the income and, all that kind of stuff. But the vote today was to, yes, start looking at that, and then there will be a future vote after more numbers and stuff are in, and our bond council looks at it and everything else. But by using the bond rating at Grand Traverse County, which is AA+, they can save over the life of this bond about $18 million. So, and we're talking about a $120 million investment in our airport, in our community, and about half of that will be paid for by the federal government. And the other half is going to be paid for by airport operations. Zero of it is going to be paid for by Grand Traverse County tax base, Grand Traverse County taxes. That's the history. The last improvement was done the same way. The last, when we put the whole new terminal in there, which is interesting. The new terminal is 20 years old this month.
Oh, my goodness.
It's kind of a shocker. And a little trivia, who knows the very first passenger to land at Traverse City, the new Traverse City terminal? George W. Bush. The terminal wasn't open yet. He flew in to make a speech.
Oh, yeah, that's
Air Force One went to that side. The second person to land there, the second plane, was the Vice President, Cheney. So that's kind of the trivia. So anyway, enough about that. You'll see that in the paper tomorrow. That's kind of big news. Something else I think is big news, and I hope you guys will help kind of put this word out, but we have 10 board, like the different boards we have, road commission, different things. We have 10 different boards that are going to be looking for people here, and we're going to start doing interviews in November. So we've got a couple ad hocs we'll probably set up, but we're going to have openings on building codes, road commission, veterans affairs, DHHS, library, airport, Beta, Parks and Rec, Economic Development Corporation, and Commission on Aging. So I'll probably even send out emails to you guys to disperse, because sometimes we have very few applicants for those. Sometimes we have one for one position. Sometimes they're very, very good people. But a couple times recently, we've gone back out and asked for more because it's just not really a good fit, or they're not eligible. Sometimes they apply and we go through and they're not, like for Veterans Affairs, we had one was not eligible. So keep that in mind. And if you guys interact with people who might be good for those boards, I hope that you will encourage people to apply. So I think I've talked long enough, unless you guys have any other questions for me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, appreciate the commission's support in Camp Grey Lick very much.
Yep, it was a good thing that we did there, I think.
Okay, we will move on to engineering projects. We have Joe Slanecki here with Reed Trim, and going over a couple of projects, but also in your packet, we do have Arbutus Lake number 5 change orders, and then the sewer force main. Did Garth brief you on the?
Yes.
Oh, awesome, fantastic.
So before I get started on Arbutus Park number 5, he just wanted me to mention for Jens Park that the final certificate for payment has been submitted and all the work is complete. So that's coming up.
Yep.
So that one's done. But then Arbutus number 5, the change order that you have in your packet, they've been provided for approval. And change order 3 removes all the pavement marking from the contract, so the township won't be paying for the defective work that was done. And change order number 4 is a balancing change order, and it's just getting to reducing the contract quantity of the root carpet that stabilizes the bank. So with those. And then the contractor may request for final payment and project closeout when the change orders are approved.
Right. And so with the first one in particular, where it says, let's see, where is it? As far as the work not being, what it is they did not use the paint that was spec'd on the bids. So they used a different paint, and so it could have a proponent or propensity maybe not to last quite as long. So they're deducting for that. Does anyone have any questions on, well, first, Jen's Park, that will be closed out. Any questions on Arbutus or the change orders? If not, could we have a motion to approve the change order number 3 and the change order number 4 for the Arbutus Lake number 5 project?
I'm making a motion to approve Arbutus Lake number 5 park project, change order number 3 and number 4.
Thank you. Thank you. There's moved by Walters and supported by Corte to approve the 2 change orders. What's that? That's Corte, that's, yeah. Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by no? Okay, got that taken care of.
All right, and then next up is the preliminary design engineering for the replacement of force main number 1. If you remember, we did a survey with phase 1, and then we moved into phase 2, which was really looking at each route that we thought was feasible for the project to try and pick what would be the best route. So in your packet, you have the report that went along with that, and we've made a kind of a recommendation for a route selection to move forward with. And we'll be presenting in more detail at a joint meeting that's coming up.
Yep, we're looking at having a joint meeting with Acme Township. Just remember all of the stuff that Daryl talked about regarding bonds, because we're going to be covering a bit of that for the sewer. So at that meeting, we'll go over some of the preliminary design engineering report, make sure Acme Township as well as their trustees are brought up to speed, and then we're hoping to have bond counsel here. We're using Mark Nettleton from Mike Myers. You'll remember him from water and sewer discussions, and Andy, I forget what's his last name? Campbell, that's correct, from Benzinski and Company, who is the financial planner for that, for the bond sale. So they'll be with us for that joint meeting, so that'll be some good information. We are looking at, if everyone could take a look at their calendars really quickly. Sorry, Joe, if we could, no, it's looking like November 21st is working for most of the consultants and for Acme Township. Would November 21st work for some of you?
When?
November 21st. Yep, looks like it.
It may not, it depends on how I have
Okay,
some stuff.
okay. All right, and Cortades or,
At this point, I don't know.
oh, okay,
I would expect so, but I don't know.
okay. You're looking, okay. You're doing okay? All right, so we'll probably be setting that date then within just the next couple days, so. And I know Brian had already cleared the dates with Wade Trim too, so.
That's correct.
Yep,
So this phase, we really looked at constructability issues and potential conflicts that could come up. How are we going to install it? Where are we going to install it? And we came to the conclusion that this project is probably best bid in 2 different contracts. One contract would be from the lift station near 3 Mile Road to almost Garfield Road. There's a little gray area in there as to where it would actually terminate. But generally, it's at Garfield Road. And that would be proposed right now as one contract to do a directional bore and trenchless installation. There's a lot of green space, pretty direct alignment, not a lot of conflicts. Wanted to utilize the MDOT railroad right away and keep enough offset off the existing main so that we don't have any issues with that type of installation.
Because the city, I'm sorry, the city of Traverse City just did all of that work on the north side of the road.
Correct.
That was DTE.
Yep, and if you remember from the preliminary engineering report, that was where we wanted to put the force main. So.
And we didn't know about that project from DTE until just weeks before they were out there.
Yes. So that kind of had to revamp our plan and look a little harder. So we had some discussions with M.Rail, and it's pretty straightforward. I believe it's a license agreement to utilize their right-of-way, and they gave us their criteria for installation, what we have to do within a certain distance of the tracks, and what the requirements are when we need a railroad inspector there. And we tried to minimize all the special requirements of putting it in steel casing, having an inspector on site for a certain amount per day. And we kind of fit it in there where we don't have a whole lot of impact with their operation. So it was kind of a 25-foot offset off the center line of the railroad tracks, and it fit in quite nice.
So you're gonna be on the north side of the railroad tracks?
Yes, it would be on the north side of the railroad tracks, and it would follow slightly off the TART trail.
That's what I was gonna ask you,
Yeah.
does that mean we're gonna have to put in, redo the TART trail?
We are, right now, the plan is to do directional drilling and receiving pits. So some of those receiving pits, the trail wanders a little bit, so some of those might be close to the asphalt, and you would have to replace a patch, but the intent is not to replace the trail in its entirety. It's to avoid all that.
They just redid it not too long.
Yeah, that's what seems to have happened along the whole route, is everyone just redid something.
Well, and that's why Waitrim's taken a lot of extra attention to reaching out to the county, Garfield Township, and so forth.
Correct, yep. County, city,
Utilities.
utilities. So what we really wanted to talk about today was Contract 2, which starts at Garfield Road and goes to the wastewater treatment plant. And I brought this just to kind of show you. Hold it and still talk.
Oh, do we have we don't have our,
Yeah.
we can
and
just set it on a chair right
I couldn't find any
there.
of our tripods.
Yeah, we thought you could probably use that one, maybe a little taller.
We remodeled the office and all our.
Pop it up on the arms there. There we go.
Engineer something.
Take an engineer to figure this out.
2 inches.
Two of them.
How many engineers?
Yeah. So in the preliminary engineering report, we really looked at utilizing Hannah Avenue instead of the existing railroad right-of-way and TART trail where the existing force main runs. And we started a lot of discussions with the city about using that route. And they had some plans in their CIP for some water main replacement. Had discussions with them on maybe doing a joint improvement project where it was all one, so you just go in and tear stuff up once. But there were sections of the road that were in good enough condition that they weren't favorable to doing that. They wanted to get a little bit more life out of the investment before they tore something up. And the water main wasn't high on their CIP plan. So there was a lot of hesitancy to agree to that kind of project for their budgetary purposes. And 2C, which is following the existing route, it's been highly developed since that original main was put in. There's new apartments, there's new paved TART trail, there's a community garden at the library, and it appears like that community garden is right on top of the existing force main. At least the markers that mark the force main go right through it. So there'd just be a lot of infrastructure and things to deal with, not a lot of separation for installation. So working right next to a fragile force main that's underground, the risk of breaking it if you're too close to it is pretty high. Directional drill was not recommended by the companies that do it. They wanted 10-foot separation which pushed us into other utilities or, so it could be done. It would be slow and tedious, and that was our concern. So after exploring those two routes in a lot of detail, we kind of just sat down and looked at the map and noticed that there's an alley north of Hannah that is gravel, and there's no utilities in it, and there's water and sewer crossings on the north-south crossroads that are paved. So it really cut down on any existing utility conflicts. Looks like it would be an excellent route, and the city was quite favorable to that route. They were happier with that selection. And then where it ties back in at Barlow Street to what was proposed on Contract 1A, that is the segment of road that has poor pavement condition. So they were like, oh, okay, I think we could, we can stomach that. So that one kind of rose to the top for constructability reasons and permitting reasons.
That's 2B.
2B.
Yep.
That's correct.
And I think you were going to you were putting in you were going to be submitting something shortly, weren't you?
Yeah, after this. I wanted to mention that we've done pretty well in this project as far as budget goes. So under this phase, we'd like to let you know that we want to pursue permitting of this a little bit ahead of schedule because we've been seeing sewer permits take 120 to 150 days to get turned back in, which really truncates the bidding time. So as this phase, we've already done horizontal alignment and profile. So we've got conflicts and horizontal alignment pretty well dialed. For permitting, you don't really need final construction quantities or like the details of how you're going to get through an intersection as far as like curb and gutter, streets, like that kind of thing. They really want to know, have you met the standards and what's your offsets from existing utilities? They don't really care how it goes in the ground. They just want to know where it's going in the ground. So what we wanted to do was kind of expedite the permitting process and get it turned in here in November. So that way we have enough time to get through the permit review so that we don't delay bidding. And this project is such a size that you can apply for an expedited permit and that costs money, but they don't have a category for a project of this length. So we explored splitting it into two, like as the two contracts, but they'd like to see it in its entirety. So we'd have to permit the whole force main. And they didn't have a fee associated with a project of this size, but if you were to prorate what they had and they'd allow us to do it, it was, I believe it was north of $15,000 to expedite it. So our plan of attack, because we don't even know if they'd allow us to expedite this one, it's so big, was to try and just get it in early and get the process started.
Yeah, and I don't think if we could just reach a consensus on them doing that, but I think that is a good suggestion from Wade Trim to go ahead and start to proceed with that permitting under the current contract. Does anyone have any issues with that? Okay. Do you need to update the scope at all and have me re-sign that, or?
I'll check with Brian.
Okay.
It'd be a good thing to
Okay.
add as an addendum.
Okay, and just for clarification, Mindy, do you want to make a motion that would authorize me to sign that revised scope?
I'll make a motion to authorize the revised scope to begin permitting of the
Sewer force main
number one
project.
project.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Walters and supported by M. Cortade. Is everyone clear on the motion? Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? Okay, so we got ourselves covered that way.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll get an amendment sent to you.
That sounds good.
And at this point, I don't believe there would be any budget change.
Yeah, if you need, like I said, take a look at it and see if it's needed. I didn't take a look at the original contract before we came into the meeting tonight, so.
Yeah. It went well for this phase.
Good, that's great.
So with the report, we were looking for maybe some feedback questions that you had before we distributed it to Acme. Anything you'd like to see that maybe wasn't clear enough?
Anything? Yeah, we've become pretty familiar with the project, and we're looking forward to actually 25 and 26 and getting that done, which kind of leads us, if I'm not cutting this part too short, and you just let me know if I am, into the second part of this that was included in your packet, which is, you'll see I received a letter from Grand Traverse County regarding the status of funding, and you'll also see I have kept them up to date, and with their administrator, with their special projects coordinator, also with Commissioner Nelson and Commissioner Henschel. And then I did ask Wade Trim for a letter showing some scheduling, and that you have in front of you. It's a September 27th Wade Trim schedule that shows the construction during 2025 and 2026 construction season. And as I've talked with Brian and Joe, and as well the Benzinski and Company will be, and also Rod Taylor from Anarchist Harrison, will be spending more than the $2 million next summer. So just the first part of that project will be more than $2 million plus our match to the county. So we can exhaust those funds first, right out of the gate. I haven't submitted any of this project so far. This will still be able to go into that we can submit for, but I haven't submitted it yet. One, wanting to keep that $2 million liquid there, the promise of it, so if we need it as a match for anything else, that we had some flexibility. But we'll be looking at moving forward when we will put in for reimbursement of the total engineering, probably when they're done getting some of the permitting applied for. And then as we're moving into the beginning of the construction next year, and again, we'll be going over some more of that during the joint meeting. Does anyone have any questions on the proposed resolution in front of you, which in the end asserts that the financial funding plan will utilize East Bay and Acme Township's Enterprise Fund cash as a match to Grand Traverse County's ARPA funding, which will be utilized at the onset of the project. And number two, that the township projects that the ARPA funds will be expended and requested for reimbursement prior to December 2025, though it is realized this funding could be reimbursed up to December 2026. And lastly, of the sewer force main project, estimated at $11 million, more than $2.5 million, which is the Grand Traverse County ARPA allocation, thank you very much, and the township's match will be spent during the 2025 construction season. Any questions on the resolution?
Which is 2024-21.
21, okay, great. Is there a?
Of the ones that were in the consent calendar. Wasn't there some on the consent? Well, maybe not.
I thought the latest one might be on the website.
Sorry,
Now,
I thought
looking
there
at
was
the
some
minutes,
on
The
the,
last one that was adopted by the board was 20 in September.
okay, sorry, my mistake. Maybe I was reading the minutes, and there was some there.
Yeah, there were in the
Yeah.
consent calendar for September.
Maybe that's what I was doing.
That 2024-21 should be the next one to be used.
Okay,
I make a motion that we approve Resolution 2024-21.
Support.
okay, motion has been made by Bartlett and supported by Walters. Any further discussion? And we'll do a roll call vote on Resolution 2024-21.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
M. Cortade,
Yes.
Lyle,
Yes.
S. Cortade,
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. And with that, I want to thank Commissioner Nelson, who happens to be here. Please also thank your fellow commissioners for that ARPA allocation. That is a huge piece of the funding, a puzzle piece for this whole process. So,
And as you communicated, we've been talking about that because a lot of people looking at that $2 million hoping that.
it's a lot of money.
Like it's a piece of steak, that they're just grabbing the card. But I have assured them that you guys have this well under control.
Well, we sure are trying, and, one of the things we want to make sure is that we're staying on track with this, so I appreciate the board's support in moving forward with the permitting, so that we can keep this right along on track, and we don't run up into any 2026 hard deadlines that we can't meet. I don't believe that will happen, because that's not what we're working for. It can't happen.
Is there any questions on like next steps after this, like with the schedule that was given?
I think it's good, and we'll get into a lot more detail on the proposed November 21st meeting.
Yeah, we'll have a lot more.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
That'll be great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Joe. Okay. With that, we will move on to the Parks Commission. See, we have Allie Hetmer here. Hi, Allie, how are you? And we do have the Parks Commission quarterly report in here.
Oh, good. I don't think I have that on my person, so I'm glad you do.
Well, I tell you what.
No, there's one right here.
Okay.
I have some notes here. So,
That's it.
thank you. So anyways, good evening. Lovely to be back here. So some of the fun stuff that we've been up to over the last quarter here, I want to throw this on here because it was very fun. In July, we had our game night at Grace McDonald, which we scheduled in place of the sledding party we normally have in the winter because unfortunately we had no snow. That was a really great opportunity to connect with the community members, and I think it was really successful.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I learned how to play pickleball. It was great. So the primary thing we've been working on for the past couple months is, of course, our 2025 budget. So just kind of figuring out those line items and our project priorities, especially at Grace, looking at some accessibility and the warming hut updates. We are kind of re-envisioning where we want to go with that maybe. To expand our offerings, like the community programming we might be able to do, and also some grants we might be eligible to apply for. I know it's the DNR one that we've gotten applied for a couple times
Yeah.
and haven't been successful. So some of that, and then also taking a look at, now that Arbutus 5 is wrapped up, phase 1, looking at phase 2, what kind of equipment and other upgrades we want to put into there, keeping in mind, again, ADA accessibility and, the age range of all the folks that use that park. And yeah, then a couple other ongoing projects like the cornhole at Grace McDonald, and then, yeah, again, just like some nice paths around Grace as well. So another big thing is the Holiday Woodlands survey. We're working on getting community feedback there and then trying to create a master plan for that park. One of the primary things that people have requested is, I think, signage. And I'm here with them on that one. It is a little bit confusing still in there. And then also the geocaches have been updated. They're in place now at all of the parks. And
They're not live yet, but they're close.
yeah, they're right there on the line. And I don't know, Beth, if they have been updated on the really nice story about the family at Jen's.
Nope, that one hasn't been done yet, but will be added into the cache, yeah. That one hasn't been placed yet.
Okay, all right, gotcha. And then also working on replacing the little Fluger libraries at all of the parks. We've had a couple of community donors who have, donated the money for a little free library, some of them with a bench, some of them not, at various different parks in the township in honor of family members and things like that. So that's really nice as well. And then I briefly mentioned this, but the warming hut at Grace McDonald, we've had a couple of ideas running around about how to expand our offerings as far as programming and possibly a camp type thing. And if we can expand that use of that pavilion into a warming hut with heaters, sidewalls, things like that, to make it more of a multi-purpose space throughout the year.
And if you want to see an example of what Ally's talking about, you can head to the Conservation District, which is where we got our inspiration, right?
Yeah, I was very surprised. Beth was at the Conservation District for the DNR Trust Fund tour when they were around, and I happened to be outside as well. And she said, Ellie, these gas heaters in there, these are great. So I felt very silly that I hadn't put two and two together, but that's kind of the route that we're going. If you guys are ever at the Boardman River Nature Center, that pavilion there is a really good example of what we're thinking about.
Any questions for Ally? Okay. Awesome, thank you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Yep, enjoy your evening, guys.
You do the same. Just wanted to mention too, one of our Parks Commissioners recently had a newborn too. So if you get a chance and you see Garrison, congratulate him on his new little one. Okay, with that, we will move on to the Planning and Zoning Department. Claire Carner is here with us. Hi Claire, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Got my computer here with the ordinance pulled up in case there's specific questions on that.
Do you, would it be okay if we went over your report first?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Planning to start with the report. So, been busy first 9 months in planning and zoning. I can't remember if I was even telling this board or not, but we generally see about like 10 or so site plans over the course of the year. We're at 22 now for this year of just site plan applications. So you'll see with that development review, it kind of lists them all. We've had 2 more applications submitted since I put this together. But just kind of a quick summary, I'm happy to answer any specific questions, but we've approved, the Planning Commission has approved 5 residential developments so far this year. That's 511 units, and it's a pretty broad mix of types of housing. It is a lot of single-family that has been approved. We've got, and then 99 of those units were senior units, so that was at the Hampton Manor, right across the street. We've approved 3 new hotels, as well as a vacation rental development all along US 31. There's 1 new commercial building, and that's the True North, so it's approved at the beginning of the year. They're well on their way with construction on that, and then there's been a number of different industrial and commercial, not necessarily new builds, but what they could be additions or change of use or those types of reviews. So with the zoning ordinance, Planning Commission has, well, actually Township Board ultimately has approved 4 different text amendments, and those were really just kind of Band-Aids as we work through the zoning ordinance rewrite. So all 4 of those amendments were really tied to kind of time-sensitive developments that were going through the process that the applicant or the township felt needed to be addressed sooner rather than later. I will mention, and many of you are aware, the Planning Commission, we've got the introduction of the ordinance today. The Planning Commission is planning to take a look this winter at a few of the outstanding zoning issues, and so we are likely going to be looking at, our first zoning amendment will likely be related to the commercial signage and billboard regulations, because that was one area where we wanted more information informed by the Beach District visioning process, and so it just wasn't quite ready when we finalize the draft ordinance. Variance and appeals, you'll see that so far there's been 4 appeals or variances in front of the ZBA. 3 of those have been denied and 1 was withdrawn. So it's a pretty big change kind of to what we have maybe traditionally seen with, I think we're seeing fewer applications coming in front of the ZBA, which is a good thing, and hopefully we continue to amend the ordinance to reduce the number of variance requests. In terms of land use permits, you'll see we've got 40 new homes that have been approved, 39 accessory buildings, garages. A total of 114 land use permits have been issued to date or through the end of September. For short-term rentals, I've got 148 licenses right now. That's a little bit in flux right now. The application period closes November 1st, so that we'll have a better idea after all of the applications have been processed, kind of where we are. As you'll recall, The cap that the Township Board enacted is 145, so we're getting really close to that number. So could potentially have some more licenses available after this license period closes. Any questions on licenses, permits, anything that we've gone over so far?
I think we didn't really think we would hit that, have actively, or licenses passable in the first year. We thought it'd
I was
really.
figuring that I wouldn't be working here anymore. Thought it would be, a decade. but-
And two, I just wanted to mention the variances, as you talked, you're correct in that amending the ordinance helps with that. And, but also part of that too is the planning and zoning team has done a good job in educating potential applicants about what would meet a variance standard and what wouldn't, so.
Yeah. So moving on to code enforcement activity, you'll see, we're trying to track these a little bit differently and write for a little bit more specificity on the different topic areas. And we're actually working with BSNA to build out the issues even further. So I think you'll see with upcoming summaries of our enforcement, you'll see more different categories, so we can really drill down into what are the how many signage related, how many lighting related, how many kind of some of the various complaints that are themes that we see repeatedly. You'll see the category other violations is at 45, so we kind of want to drill down into a little bit more detail on that. But the other violation category right now includes issues related to unlawful use of tents and trailers, short-term rentals, buildings that are within the required setbacks, lighting violations, or lighting complaints, and potential violations in the Forest Lakes Overlay District, building without a permit. So year to date, there have been 72 complaints of potential violations. So there's currently 21 complaints that are under review. So these may or may not turn out to be complaints. They may or may not result in a citation being issued, but right now we've closed out 51 of them. We've got 21 that are currently under review in process, likely working with Bill. Did want to mention that Bill and I got to go out last week with the Marine Sheriff, and we went out on Arbutus, and that was just helpful. Bill hadn't been out onto the inland lakes yet. He's seen them a bunch from land side, but it's helpful just to get out and see the water side, especially with all the ordinance requirements that we're looking at, and the buffer and retaining walls, and just helpful to get eyes out on the lake. And so that was awesome that the Marine Sheriff took us out, offered to take us out on other lakes this spring. So I think that was all that I had on ordinance-related items.
Any questions on code enforcement from the board?
Bill was
Okay.
hoping to be here today. He had an appointment in Flint, so he will plan to be here at the next quarterly meeting to answer more detailed enforcement-related questions.
Thank you.
So I had the opportunity to attend the Michigan Planning Conference a few weeks ago. That was very informative. It was actually the first in-person MAP conference I had attended since like 2019. So just between having a kid and COVID, it was nice to be back in person at the MAP conference. I had been doing it mostly remotely. I'm going to be presenting at the Northwest Michigan Housing Summit in a couple weeks on some of the East Bay Township housing ordinance changes, and also presenting at a Michigan Association of Planning webinar on the daycare and some of the ordinance that they reached out to us and had heard that East Bay Township was making some changes related to zoning. Sam is going to be completing the upcoming zoning administrator certification training this winter.
Partially funded by Par Plan. Thank you
Yes,
very
so
much.
Yeah, thank you, Par Plan. And yeah, other than that, we've got a lot of planning department projects going on and updates, so I won't read through all of that. I will mention that October 29th is our final presentation for the Beach District, so hope some of you can join us for that. That's exciting. That'll be presentation and then opportunity for kind of going around and looking at some of the action items that have been identified and having the public help us with rating and prioritizing the actions, and then also adding to that list if there's anything that have been missed. So
Where are you holding that meeting?
that is at Harbor Brook Hall, the evening of the 29th, and so, yeah.
Great. Any questions on the quarterly report? Thank you, Claire. And we'll go on to the zoning ordinance then.
Okay, so the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the draft zoning ordinance. I believe that was October 1st. And as a part of that public hearing, there were 2 changes that the Planning Commission made to the draft ordinance. So one of them was related to retaining walls. So they wanted to strengthen the language and specifically state that if the engineer review determines that there's imminent loss of an existing structure, so right now is the previous language basically just said that the township engineer would need to review and state that a retaining wall was necessary to support a critical structure. This strengthened the language a little bit to specifically say that retaining walls can only go in that 50-foot setback if there's an imminent loss of an existing structure. It can't be used to justify a new home or a new build or something like that. So that was one change. And then the other change was one that we had significant discussion about, and that was the density in the districts outside of the urban growth boundary. So what was presented, what had been in the draft zoning ordinance was reducing the density from 1 unit per 40,000 square feet to 1 unit per 2 acres. So the Planning Commission decided to move that back to what's in the current ordinance right now. So for Ag District, the Lakes area, and the Boardman River, the minimum density, or the maximum density allowed is 1 unit per 40,000 square feet, which is what is currently in the ordinance. The Planning Commission plans to take a closer look this winter at that, along with a number of different zoning issues that have come up, to see, kind of look at policy options related to clustering and other tools for preserving open space.
Claire, the previous meeting to that, the one after, we had a joint meeting. Were there any changes made at that meeting?
There were, and those are summarized. I don't have that all in front of me. They're summarized in a memo from Giffords Webster, and that was in the Planning Commission packet.
Okay.
So,
All right.
So, but one of the biggest ones in there was the transient activity.
the camping, I think.
Yes.
The transient, or the
Temporary.
temporary dwelling units. Thank you. One of those words. One of those keywords. Yeah, so removing the temporary dwelling, not removing it, but basically keeping it the way it is in the current ordinance, which prohibits it in most instances.
But that's one of the things that we want to look at again this winter. So that's on the checklist to look at.
Okay. Real quick, just on the process. So we have this as an introduction tonight. As you know, we're a charter township. We cannot approve anything with an ordinance on the same meeting in which it's introduced. So this is introduced. The earliest this board could take any action would be in November, and we would have to follow some steps on publication in between those to do that. But any questions right now, Glenn?
Yeah, I got a couple. Okay, on temporary dwelling, if I read what was sent in the email, they're gonna allow it for what they call itinerant farm workers, is that what it's?
I can pull it up real quick.
448.
So, yeah, temporary structures may be used to house itinerant farm laborers during the normal harvest season.
Okay. Another question was, and I'm not sure if I got this right or not, so bear with me. Low-density residential, the way it stands now is 12,000 square foot property, and it's gonna be, the new one is gonna be $87.50?
That's correct, yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Maybe I ought to shut up. But I think that was all I really had. I was concerned with that, and I know that ag went back to the way it was.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, and I will say
It
with
wasn't
the,
so painful though, was it?
with the density in like the low-density residential, it is 8,750,
Right.
unless you don't have sewer and water, then it's 40,000 square
Yeah.
feet. So that's the same
Thank
as
you.
keeping it consistent.
Other questions? Okay. I guess I had a couple. One on the retaining wall. Did we run that language past council? I know they were at the meeting. Was there any unintended consequences to that?
Yeah, Brian didn't mention anything during the discussion, but we didn't specifically revisit it with him.
Okay. And what are the issues that you mentioned the Planning Commission has committed to reviewing again?
Let me just pull that up real quick.
Because I have on here,
So the main ones, some of them are police power. So the planning commission's reviewing the transient activity ordinance and also the septic ordinance, which were
Yeah.
two big things that came up with the
Yeah.
zoning, but those are both on the docket. In terms of zoning, it's temporary dwellings.
which is
but-
camping.
Yeah, revisiting the camping, revisiting the density outside of the urban growth boundary, and revisiting the sign, billboard, and signage in the commercial district. I would say the other one that was mentioned was taking a look at some of the Forest Lakes overlay standards, specifically wanting to take a closer look at the retaining walls, but that would be probably a little bit lower on the list, and would want to circle back with the planning commission just to see if what we had identified was sufficient.
Sure. I know when we had sent, after the joint meeting and had listed some things to talk about, Mindy, what was the discussion regarding potential recreation in some areas? Because it was really limited in a lot of areas that had some land that may be suitable for recreation. And if you don't remember, Claire might remember. I mean, it's just for either of you, really.
Well, it was the recreational establishment in the Lakes District that was causing people, yeah. So we started talking about what that might look like, and, people were, thinking huge water parks, and then we were thinking, okay, but what about disc golf rental equipment, or, cornhole rental equipment, or that kind of smaller thing, and then we started talking about PGOs and the sled rentals over there, and then I don't remember what was said.
I do remember the conversation also involved concerns of, oh, does this mean we can't, ice skating or cross-country skiing or all these different activities that people really enjoyed, but then there was sort of a differentiation between the act of getting out and doing it and the kind of gathering and doing those activities versus kind of the commercial use that involves kind of more infrastructure.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so, but right now, it wasn't changed, there was nothing that was even, it's the same verbiage that was there. Okay, all righty. What is the board's pleasure regarding the zoning ordinance? It is introduced. And I guess we would want to have a motion to introduce the proposed zoning ordinance and map and publicize for potential action in November.
How does our November schedule look? Are we still thinking of having 2 public hearings, one for the special assessment district, one for the budget? But I'm just wondering, time-wise, is that going to then make us have to make some actions to go past 10 o'clock if we've got I don't know, I'm just asking.
Yeah, well, we could also do this motion for November or December, and then we could do it according to schedule. Because we will definitely be having the scout camp before us in November, and our budget before us in November.
Have to do the light districts in November.
Yeah, they don't actually end up taking that.
No, they
Yeah.
don't. No.
Yeah, some of it doesn't take too awful long. Like, if you look at this agenda, it's pretty loaded, but we get through it pretty quick. But,
I'll make a motion to consider final adoption of the new zoning ordinance and map at the November or December board meeting.
Or
motion is made by Walters and supported by Lyle. Any further discussion? I guess I have a couple points. One thing, I had heard consensus when we had our joint meeting on the camping that, we thought that there needed to be some tweaks to be made, but we felt that it was also unrealistic not to allow them because, one, of the enforcement, and two, I don't know about you, but just looking around our community, there are an awful lot of campers in driveways and around places. It's like boats. We live in northern Michigan. So, I really do feel that the Planning Commission should strongly take a look at that and see what fertile ground there is in the middle on that. I also did listen to the Planning Commission for some of the last meeting, and on the agriculture, I think it was great, the conversation, and appreciated the public input. Also appreciated the rationale and reasons, that the 2 acres came out of the zoning ordinance subcommittee. But what I heard in that Planning Commission meeting was there was a more moderate ground that could have been met other than just sticking with what's there now. What I heard was like a 2 acre minimum, but with clustering, you do a 1 acre or the same type of density as 1 acre. And so I'd really like for the Planning Commission to maybe take a harder look at that. I was hoping on several issues, not just that one, but I was hoping that they actually delayed like a month and really delved into them a little bit more. But I understand the need to. We want to, we've worked on this for a while, so we want to get the zoning ordinance in place, and we can tweak some of those things. But definitely want to see a commitment from the Planning Commission to look at those items and see what can represent. I also have a big, I don't know if it's a fear or a hesitation, but that when this is passed, I think there's been tremendous public engagement, to which I'm very appreciative of. I've heard of how many townships that just get bogged down in a zoning ordinance rewrite, right? It could go on for 2 to 3 years and then never get passed. And so the fact that we're at, 2 years and it's getting passed, or not even 2 years, and have had tremendous public engagement, that's great. And I think you can tell from our meeting room that, we have had a lot of public engagement, because if you haven't and you get to this point, that's when your rooms get filled. And I know that the press said that your room was filled last time because of the zoning ordinance. It wasn't all the zoning ordinance. It was a development that was going in place, was a lot of it. So I think it's been a good process, but I am concerned that when things are in place with this zoning ordinance, that we are going to have some people who live in particularly the Lakes area who are going to find that they cannot do nearly as much with their property as they want to, even if they develop it according to DNR best practices. Some of those things wouldn't be allowed either. So that's a little bit of a concern, but this is something that we've gotten to, and we will see how that plays out with requests, under the ordinance going forward. So. Okay, with that, we have a motion from Mindy and support from Glenn, is that right? To introduce this zoning ordinance and map and place it for final adoption in November or December board meeting. So all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? All right, thank you very much. I know it's been a culmination of a lot of work, so
Yep, thanks, everyone.
it is appreciated. And as well, too, for the Planning Commission and the Zoning Ordinance Subcommittee as well, too. Okay, with that, we will go on to Assessing Department. Ryan Porty is here. Now, see, Glenn, I didn't want you to grill Claire too hard, because then you were going to run Ryan off, and this is Ryan Porty. I think most of you have gotten a chance to meet him. He is our new assessor, and I'll kind of let him give you a rundown of a few things he's been working on lately.
Yeah, so I'm the new guy, and I get to go last. That's awesome. Sounds like Claire's got a lot of stuff going on. My office is going to be pretty busy with, would you say 500 new residential things? Awesome. Can't wait.
So excited, huh?
As Beth had said, I'm new up here. I'm new to the assessor's office. I'm very happy to be here. It's been a challenge to be in a new community that you don't know the roads, you don't know the people when you came from a place for 22 years that you grew up in, and you had several other jobs where you walked around all those backyards for years and years and years. I'm finding it a challenge that roads don't go in straight lines, and there's lots of easements, and property lines are in many different shapes and sizes. So I've had to do some refresher courses, which is good. Keeps me on my toes a little bit, so I'm really happy to be here. We're going to talk about it in a second in Part C. I'm already losing my first employee, so it'll be even more of a challenge. But looking forward to it. I'm having fun. I'm really happy to be here. I've made a lot of changes. If you've been in the assessor's office, some people would come in and go, oh, you moved furniture, or there's lots less books and paperwork and things like that. I've had the opportunity to update some things. I've been given the tools to computerize a lot of things, to go out with an Apple iPad to help us take pictures and update things a lot quicker into the system, and I think it's going to really help us out going forward. And one of the things that I want to do that I utilized in my former job is the state has given us the option to do a computerized assessment roll. It basically is the exact same thing, except I don't have to print out 3,000 pages. I mean, literally 3,000 pages come out, and the only people who look at it are my board review members and myself. So though the community has the ability to come in and look at it at any time, it's something that basically has kind of gone, let's say, the way of the dodo bird a little bit. We can computerize that. We can have a computer terminal that they can come in and look at that tax roll. There's some things that we have to do. We have to make sure that's available during our regular business hours, and that it gets updated in the same way at our board reviews, or if there's MTT changes. We basically still do those through the BS&A assessing software, but we add it as these are the changes that have been made so that assessment roll shows what is active at that particular time, where before we'd have to go in, find the page, write it in with pen. It's just a lot more accurate, and everything is right there. If somebody wants to see what changes are made, it's pulled up on 3 or 4 pages instead of flipping through 3,000 pages to find out what the changes are made. So that is something that I'm asking this, what are we called?
Yeah, board.
It used to be a council for me.
Board.
So this board. So this is something I'm asking for you to give me the ability to do that. I think, again, it'll speed some things up where, again, not printing out 3,000 pages and trying to store that and killing the trees.
Yeah, I think it's a great suggestion. Completely support you submitting for that and appreciate Sue as well working with him and filing this. I would like to get the board's authorization to file their request for the new certification of a computerized assessment role. So with that, if we could get a motion on that, and then it does require that you have a retention policy. I've always utilized the state guides. And when I looked for retention policy, I didn't see one. I asked Sue to look in our history to see and didn't see one. So this is just a very simple one, pulled from, other places I've seen them, and it very simply points to the state retention policies. But the state does want to see with the computerized assessment role that we actually have a township policy. And so that would fulfill those requirements. The affidavits that are here are just for your reference and interest. Those will be what is included with the future computerized assessment role to fulfill the requirements. So with that, are there any questions on the computerized assessment role? And if not, is there a motion to authorize the request for the new certification of a computerized assessment role?
So moved.
Support, is there support, or I'll support? Motion by M. Cortez, support by Friend. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? Okay, and is there a motion or question or comments on the record retention and disposal policy? Or a motion? Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the record retention and disposal policy.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
Okay, a motion made by Bartlett and supported by Walters. Yep,
Can we add an N to Michigan in the title?
we can. Well, that got lopped off there, didn't it? Thank you for the typo fix. All right, any other questions? Yeah.
Question, does the state not put out what the retention policy is, or we can override that?
Well, no, you have to adhere to their minimum requirements. You can have
Does
a,
this cover,
this is their requirements, yep. So this totally points to the state. You could have something more restrictive, but not less
Less restrictive,
restrictive,
okay.
yeah. Okay, motion is made by Bartlett and supported by Walters. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? Okay, so you've got everything you need for your computerized assessment role.
Awesome.
How about that? As well, you mentioned your cohort there, your employee. Julie started with us just about the same time, a couple weeks after Ryan did. And she is an MCAO, a new MCAO, has done a very good job for us. Unfortunately, her family requirements don't quite fit with the township's requirements, so she is going to be leaving. She's very nice to have will be transitioning for us. So 2 things with that. We have posted for the position. I put it through MAA, also through my continuing ed class where there were about, 30, 35 people in there. I took advantage of the email where they sent you the information. I blasted back out to everybody else, that this was a position. I've emailed to all of our Grand Traverse County assessors just to spread the word. And the Record Eagle. So we are working with some interest. There is one applicant that we have interviewed last week. And Ryan and I have not heard back, but just today we reached out with an offer that would be very similar to Julie's. It wouldn't impact the township financially any differently. So with that, I think what I'm asking the board is if we could have some discretion, because I don't want to wait a whole nother month if they agree that they're interested in this position to bring them on. I would like to offer a letter for later to come back to the board for authorization from there. But this person is an MCAO, has worked in the industry for about 7 years as an assessor, and really enjoys doing some of the complementary things that Ryan does as well in assessing. The salary would be the same, the rest of the benefits package the same. So just your comments and any questions or concerns with doing that.
What is the range that you're looking at?
So the posted range is 45 to 55. Julie's at 55. And I've reached out with this one with an offer of 55. This person is actually probably more experienced than I think our current employee is.
Do they live here?
Mm-hmm.
Just looking for housing.
Yeah, in the area is always a
Yeah.
big deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it? So is the board comfortable with that?
I make a motion that we allow the supervisor and assessor to make an offer and bring back the details after the fact.
Okay, there's a motion by Bartlett and support by Cortade. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? Okay, thank you for that latitude. We really appreciate it. Let's see, was there something else I was just thinking? And if we're not successful in finding a full-time employee, we may end up having to just hire someone on a part-time basis for consulting. So we would do that with like a contract with
There's a
them.
couple possible options for that if we need to. Hopefully, it's not the case.
Yep. So we'll keep you updated on that. And we have anything else, or is that about it?
I'm new, so I don't know what you're looking at. I get to say I'm new for a full year, I think.
Ryan has fit in really very nicely, and he's doing a good job for the township, and really happy. What's that?
He's even wearing logo.
He is even wearing logo gear, so we want him to be recognizable as East Bay when he goes out in the field. So, yeah, with that, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Really, really are enjoying having you here at the township.
I appreciate it. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think we covered everything with that. Computerized assessment role, the policy, and the assessing specialist. We'll move on to introduction for the budget. So you have in front of you, and this is the first time you were seeing it. You haven't even had a chance to review it. I completely understand that. I do want to hit a couple highlights for you. And I did take a look at our budget. Now, this is regardless of the fiscal year '25, but just in looking at the '24 to see where we were. And there's a couple items that we'll be watching, but we were doing pretty good, and that's why we didn't have too awful many budget amendments right now. But there are a few things we'll be watching for in this last quarter of the year. And I'll just hit those highlights for you so you know when you take a look at the consent agenda report that Sue put out, you can take a focus on those. But one is the cable franchise agreement, and I think that we've mentioned that previously. All of those departments seem to look like they're in pretty good shape. The township supplies, we have that it's much higher this year, but when I pulled all of the detail and looked at the higher expenditures, it's really related to a few things. One is some cabinetry that we had in the new office area in the printing, near where the printer is. We've also had 4 computers put in this year. And because we, didn't do them, they're not an asset, I put them under supplies, so 4 computers makes quite a dent. And we've also, because of all of our activity, we've had some tremendous ink costs. So, and those ink cartridges are extremely expensive. So we have run high there. And we'll be taking a look at that as we come into the last quarter. Let's see, with planning and zoning, you'll notice that legal is run high. Gosh, that is several $1,000s. We had a zoning variance request that we knew that was going to be a sensitive issue, and the applicant was expressing litigious tendencies very early on, so we had made sure we had good solid staff reports and legal counsel going into that. And so that's a very large part of the overage for that legal. We used our current counsel, plus we brought in as kind of increasing bench strength to work with Peter Fahey Schultz. So that's, again, a large part of that overage. On the contract services as well, we have the overages in planning and zoning due to the fellowship fees. So there was like about $10,000 when that fellow takes place that we pay towards the agency, towards CEDM. And then, let's see, moving to buildings and grounds, the ground cover, you'll see the contract services is high. It's not really that the contract services is high, it's that we had $10,000 worth of ground fill put in under the playgrounds, under 2 playgrounds that needed replenishing. And so that was quite high. We are working with other fellow townships for next year. I reached out to see who else needs that because it's brought in on a truck from Grand Rapids, so it is not inexpensive. And you just don't need that much on an annual basis, but when it needs quite a bit, it's very expensive. So we're going to be working with probably about 5 or so townships in the city next year to do a delivery for all of us at one time. So that will help save if we do it more regularly and that we partner up with those other municipalities that are doing the same thing. In the police fund, the flock safety cameras ran a little bit higher. Plus, I will let you know the any vandals that we had that covered by the company, and as well we had one that was damaged from a car accident, and that was covered by the insurance company, so all but like $50. So that was good. Ambulance for 24 is running a little bit high with some vehicle repairs. You'll remember if you look back in 2024, we had 2 times it was before the board where we had 2 larger vehicle repairs, so that's throwing that askew a little bit. And with the short-term rental fund, you've heard our revenues are just now coming in because we're doing the relicensing now. So those will come in at the end of the year, but it makes that fund, at least for right now, look a little scary if you didn't realize that the revenues are on the end of the year. And then the SAD revolving fund, it will be getting kind of maneuvered around a little bit as we're closing out one SAD and moving that into the regular fund. And that would be the Holiday Woods SAD. So in general, the projected revenues are much higher than what we feel the revenues will be at for 2024 are much higher than the amended, and that's largely for 2 reasons. One is the DNR trust fund reimbursement, and the other is the interest that we have, and other places are seeing that too, like Metro and so forth. We did budget for fund balance in this year, and likely we will not, we're projecting that we won't be using any fund balance. We had originally projected to use, let me see that final number, I think it was $565,000. Truly, with the DNR trust fund factored in, it would have been a use of fund balance of about $265,000. But I don't think we'll be there right now. We're looking at being our revenues over our expenditures between $50,000 and $100,000. But that can change as you get into that last quarter of a year. So let's see. Wanted to mention some of the things as I was talking about some of the items in the fiscal year 24 that we'll be keeping our eye on in the last quarter. Also wanted to talk about, it struck me as I was looking through this, just how very busy we have been at the township, and I'm not just saying that to say that. We have been very busy. Just to give you a quick rundown of some things, obviously elections this year, 3 elections, and with the 9 days of early voting, that's a lot going on with elections. We've had the website updated. That will be going live in November, and so that's been a process in getting that done. We converted, as you remember, to the cloud for BSNA in December of last year. So that means this entire first part of this year, we have all been getting used to the cloud. And so that's been quite a continuous process as well, with good support from BSNA. So that's terrific. The assessing department, as Ryan mentioned, we've changed staff there, going from a county contract to township staffing. As well, we've changed how we do our pictometry from a solely township contract to working with the county and the other townships in partnering to save costs there. We've also implemented Pivot Point, and a lot of the software as well has changed over from being county supplied to township. So buildings and grounds, this was really the first year that Dan's been with us for the first full year of our vendors. And I mentioned to you already the ground cover, but also we've had 2 park overhauls in that year. So Jens Park and Arbutus Lake number 5. And so it's been busy. Again, we have a new CPO who has started, and we integrated Deputy Mackenzie Kreiner has really integrated with the schools, participated with the Metropolitan Planning Organization through TTCI with all of those new documents that had to be approved and gone through for us to be able to utilize those federal funds. We've been working with economic development with Traverse Connect, Grand Traverse County, and other area townships that really culminated in a new position at the county, community development county position. That gentleman who has taken that job has moved up here from Detroit with the county, and I think he's just started like in the last month or so. He's been at a couple meetings I've been to. As you recall, the ambulance was put on a second ambulance for 4 days per week this past high season. And in planning and zoning, they've been working on, as you know, 2 different trails, 3-mile trails, safe routes to school, which are complementary but yet distinct projects. That number, we've been working with developers and looking at and explaining some of the incentives that the state passed last year, as well as Claire mentioned, the number of development reviews are much higher. Well, the zoning ordinance rewrite, the beach district, 2 fellowships, the farmers market, and changing the short-term rental vendors, which we hope not to do again for a very long time. So all of those things really do work their way into, as I was looking through this budget, really do work their way into supplies and staffing and all of those things. It's been quite a bit. So let's see. Fiscal year 25, I will go over just some of the quick highlights of fiscal year 25 so you get a sense. I have given you a balanced budget right here. Now, there are some decisions to be made with that because the original, and I'll explain why, but if I put everything in here, it probably would have been a budget where we would utilize some fund balance, but I'm going to give you that, that rationale or choice a little bit through this budget. But in starting with the revenues, you'll notice that fiscal year 25 revenues are expected to be less than the projected 24. But again, that's due to grants and the interest. We are being very conservative with both grants and the interest. And also, there's election reimbursement this year, so that pops that up in the 24 year versus the 25 year. You will notice at the bottom of your revenue, there is a transfer in for $20,000. And that is related to charging the short-term rental fund for a portion of planning and zoning staff's time. And when that time is charged, it's fully loaded, so that includes benefits, everything. And let's see, going on to expenses, through the entire item, and I'll let you, as you're looking through this in the next week or so, week or two, look through those line items, and if you have questions, feel free to give me a call. You've seen a lot of those before. The two that I will point out to you in the revenue side that are new, you'll see some food security incubator fees. Those are what is being charged for the vendor fees. And then you'll also see the food security incubator assistance down almost at the end, and that has to do with the SNAP program. So that's the revenue when someone decides to use SNAP, we get funds from the state, and then we have to pay that out later. So you'll see the part where we pay out later in the budget. But those are two new things in the revenue line items that you haven't seen before. Throughout this budget, through the expense side, on any personnel-related issues, we've used a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, which is what the Social Security has just posted, so that they'll be using in January. I am going to skip over the departments that are really, their spending is in line, and it's very typical to what you've seen before, and the details are in the footnotes, which are printed for you. And with that, the Department 101, which is the Township Board, pretty much everything's in line and pretty much status quo from very similar items from previous years. The same thing for the supervisor, the clerk, the board of review, and the treasurer. Again, there are details in the footnotes, but pretty much standard from what you've seen before. Let's see, going on to assessing, which is on page 14, that is Department 257. Again, you'll see the changes there. You'll see the salaries reflect a full year's salary, and you'll see the change because of pictometry. Also, the software, because it's not provided through, there are some software rights that are not provided through the county. And a big one you'll see is the printing and publishing, because they used to handle that all through the county with some other printing that they did as well. So we'll be doing that, but we're using the same printing company that you use for taxes as well.
Sue uses them as well.
Okay, KCI is the, yeah. So with that, you will see we're looking at about 171,000 in that department. We did have it as high in 2023, it was reaching like 257, but you'll remember we had some Michigan Tax Tribunal cases in that year, which bumped it up a little bit. But really, when all is said and done, I think we're actually saving a little bit doing it in-house, which I was going to be quite happy with it just breaking even, but I think we'll actually end up a little on the good side with that. Elections, Department 262, page 16. And what we've done here is, that next year is an off year. In 2025, we've provided for the, marginal meetings if the election board meets, but mostly you'll see two allocations here. One is 10,000, and that's for an election assistant to continue to help into the, I believe, first quarter or so, and
If available to do that.
sure. So
That grant was for,
Okay.
is through May 31.
Okay, so that's the 10,000 that was there, and then the 57,000 is a process a little bit similar to what Sue and I looked at last year, which was trying to figure out, of course, we didn't use that number this year because we had all of the elections, but in trying to figure out what do elections on the average cost us so that we make sure in the years when we don't have anything, we're still dedicating some funds to it. So we're building that up for them. And I've just put that in here as a placeholder. Really, it doesn't typically need to be in here. You would just, at the end where you have your revenues over your expenditures, you would just put that in as that's what part of the allocation is, but I've put it in here so you can clearly see that. But what we did, or what I did, was took the past 4 and 8 years of elections, brought those costs up to current dollars, and then averaged those, and then took a look at what an annual allocation would be, and so that's the 57,000, and that's where that number comes from. The Township Hall is a lot of things that are pretty rote, and just standard, typical, utilities, rug rentals, those sorts of things. But a couple of things that you will note in here, there are 2 positions in here. One with the office manager, I've opted to, and these will be brought back to you for, as I develop the job descriptions and the page, they'll be brought back to this board for approval. But for the office manager, what I'm taking a look at doing is putting in a part-time position to cover about 20 to 24 hours a week. So it would really cover from, say, 9 to 3, which is kind of the high time when they're right now at the entrance. There are 4 individuals there, 2 in the clerk's office, 2 in the treasurer's office, but they're going to lunch at various different times and so forth, and this would be a nice opportunity to have somebody there 4 days a week that would bridge those lunches and provide some continuity there. So that's budgeted in at $35,000, and as a part-time position, I don't need to budget in the benefits for that. Also, a communication specialist, and this position would either be a contract or a part-time person who would help with the website update, social media as we begin to get into that, and just in general communications, being able to take a look at documents often before they head out the door, especially mass communicated documents. And then, let's see, what other things in here? You'll note that, as I mentioned before, some of the activity, I've seen the impact and weaved through some of these line items. One of those would be, a good example is postage. And the supplies, I already mentioned to you the supplies, why those were being projected at quite a bit over what they were originally budgeted for. BS&A as well, when you come down to the 802,009 line item, that is bumped up because, well, we knew it would be once it was on the cloud. It just becomes more expensive in their annual amount that they bill you. We haven't received that invoice yet, so, hoping that it's not too awful bad, but did factor that in there just in case. Let's see. There is one thing that is not in here that I would like to consider adding, and that is some capital in here, and I know that 20,000 would cover it. The estimate I have is about 17,000, and that is to move all of our computer files onto the cloud. And what that does is it helps us in resiliency for, look at what happened with the county, and everybody here has had to work with the county and knows that it took literally months. I mean, I think we just got back online with, yeah, and so it was from June, I think, when they were hacked, and so not a fun thing to go through, and that's one way to.
Completely back up.
Yeah, it's been impacted. They were doing a lot with pen and paper. So that's one way. You'll hear another way that's later on in this budget, but that is the one thing that I have not put in this budget that I would like to consider altering. When we get to the benefits, which are in the 271 department on page 22, you'll notice that the actual fiscal year projected is less than the budgeted amount. And that's in large part because we've had some items that are not fully utilized. So the HRA, if we're not using all of that, which is pretty commonplace, and as well, the medical, we've had a flux in employees, so that's impacted that as well. Now, with the benefits, we did get noticed from Burnham and Flowers that there's a 14% increase. And for dental and vision, though, it's a 0% increase. While that's good news, dental and vision is not the most expensive. It's the medical that's the more expensive. But in general, our budgeted numbers are only up 1%. And that's because we had factored in for, again, some of those employees where we've had some flux. So it's not taking, even though that 14% is a big amount, it's not hitting our budget to really push it extremely one way or the other. Let's see. Also, you'll note on the HRA, this is based on historical use. So how many employees typically use that at a maximum? So rather than taking the 1,500 or the 3,000 times the number of full-time and part-time and maxing it out on that line item, instead I took a look at, well, how many people have we seen max out historically? And it hasn't been very many. I think we've had one, maybe two per year. So I've been
I'm not on your plan.
So we just kind of, ratcheted that down. Now, we're still committed to that. So if we saw like everybody at the township hit the maximum, we'd probably have more problems than just coming up with another $9,000. We would probably have a lot of problems with workflow because that would not mean some very good things. But so that's kind of what you see going on in that benefits department. In the road projects, it did the 2 brines and 1 estimated road project. We may not have one. You just never know with that. But there's about 40,000 in there if we do an SAD. And if we aren't looking at an SAD, that could be where the 20 comes from for the cloud too. So who knows? But we do know that there's 1 SAD, obviously, that we'll be hearing from in November. So we'll see. Let's see, in 623, here's where you have some of these little projects, or they're not little projects, they're big projects, little number of line items, though. The 621 was the master plan and zoning ordinance study, and so that really is, we're at the culmination of that. And so while I do have the $5,000 there for Giffords and Webster to do any amendments, like I said, as you guys, take a look at some other things and they have to go back and adjust the documents, this really could be put into the 702 department. I just left it here for right now. We could transition that later if we find, that's easier to do. The 622, actually escapes me right now what the 622 was, but shoot. It's something that we haven't done in 23 we obviously had activity, but I apologize that I am 622, I just don't have that one in my notes. I'll get that back to you, but it was not one that we would have any activity with. It was a special project that was culminated. So 623 is trails. So there may be some activity with trails, and this one may definitely change as we move forward in the year, but that 40,000 that's under the requested is really what I believe will be left with the OHM contract. And because it's the OHM contract, you'll see a corresponding 40,000 in revenue, because remember, that gets all paid out by TART, is repaid by TART. The 624, which is the beach district, they have finished 1 grant at the end of this year, and the coastal zone management grant, and the USDA is allowed to go into 2025. So they're looking at about 40 to 45,000 with that. And again, let's see, we should have that in the, actually, I can up this, I apologize, I can up the grant awards to 80 on that, so that we'll have the 40 come in from TART, and then we'll also have the 40 that will be coming in from the USDA. So I will update that number. Well, and there's the 20,000 for the cloud. How about that? Anyway, we'll go on to the planning and zoning. As I mentioned to you, all of the salaries have been adjusted with 2.5 as the COLA. Here, these included as well. There is one where I've put a performance adjustment, an industry adjustment, and that is with the planner's wages. Really, when you take a look at all of those projects that I listed earlier, a lot of people have been working on those there, but primarily that has fallen a lot on Claire's shoulder, as she has delivered quite well with all of those projects. So, but that'll be coming to you in a resolution of the wages that we do. Let's see, what else do we have here in planning and zoning? We have contract services. That is the CIP, which we started to have conversations on this year, but we were, as I mentioned, quite busy with a lot of things. So we're going to see that one through in 2025. And that also has some grant writing in it, and that's the contract services number 802. Let's see, the ZBA, the Planning Commission, those are all pretty standardized, right in line. When you go to parks, that is one I definitely wanted to visit with you about. Parks Commission did a nice job deliberating about their projects. Ally hit on a lot of those. Now, in the footnotes, you will see, because I was not taking this out, but I wanted you to see the difference in the juxtaposition. It is in your footnotes what they have asked for. So if you look at the footnote on page 34, it's the second footnote up is line item 973.753. They had asked for $300,000, and that's for the Grace McDonald Park. That was for a lot of projects combined together. Ally spoke about those, the cornhole, the pavilion, next to the baseball field, the all-sports field over there, they're debating whether to rehabilitate that as an all-sports field or change it to a dog park. So that's included in there. So there's quite a few projects and some sidewalks included in that 300,000. Now, that isn't included on the overall budget where it's lined out on page 33. And the reason is I wanted you to be able to see a net zero budget, a balanced budget. And then take a look at, okay, what do we want? Do we want to put the 300,000 in there? How will that impact it? What usage of fund balance does that mean? So we can adjust that based on their request. So I wanted you to see what their request is and see what would get you to a balanced budget. Along the same lines are the Arbutus Lake number 5, which is their last line item. And I have 90,000 in there to get this to balance, but really they were looking for 125,000. You'll see that 125,000 in your footnote, but you'll just see the 90,000 in the budget to get us to that balanced budget. That 125 was for the second phase 2. They're not looking at doing too much over there. There's not a whole lot of room to do too much over there, but they are looking at putting in some play equipment, not a huge play big thing, but something for some children to do. If memory serves me, and I think it does, they're actually looking for the 2 to 5 year old range because they feel like the 5 to 12 year olds are playing in the water and, doing that sort of thing. So they were looking at some structures, but those structures are expensive, and leveling it up, putting in a bench, all that kind of good stuff, it adds up quite quickly. So wanted you to take a look at those, and we'll have to take a look and see what we would like to do there. But definitely what's included in the budget is not what they asked for, but what they asked for is included in the footnotes. So something very important to consider. The buildings and grounds on 770, very similar things to what you've seen on an annual basis. You will note the contract services is a little higher. We've been doing good with the contract services and what they were anticipated being. However, why they've bumped up a little, I mentioned to you the ground covers in there. And also, we've included some power washing. What we've found is over at Arbutus, the fishing pier and the kayak launch gets pretty gnarly through the week. And so we've had someone just coming out and power washing that to get that cleaned up and keep that tidy for the park goers. So a couple of those things added together.
What kind of material is that? Is that womanized they got on those decks?
They're both maintenance-free. Remember the one was like not Trex, it's not Trex, but, oh gosh, Glenn, I can get you the name of it, but it's a maintenance-free decking. It has some texture to it though, because it grips, which is great because people are wet often when they're walking up on that, and you don't want them to slip. But also what it does is it gets that dirt right in that grain, and so it's not that easy just to like sweep it off or blow it off, so.
Do we not have a power washer that, or part-time help to go down out and power wash it, or no?
Well, it was a little bit much at first, and we found someone who does it pretty reasonably and is super consistent and out there, little bit easier. Let's see. So with that, again, your expenses for your fiscal year, when you go to look at the end, you do have some, those contingencies are an odd number, it took it to zero. Took the revenues to equal the expenses. And then some of the contributions, you'll see that you're used to seeing Boardman River Project, fireworks agreement, public access television, TTCI. And with that, you'll find the projected expenses are going to be less than what we budgeted, which is great. Some of that can be from cost savings, some of it can be from projects that weren't finished or completed, a multitude of things. And then our fiscal year 2025, obviously our spending we're looking at is down from those years, but remember we had two big park projects in there, so that's a large part of it as well. So with that, kind of taking you through the 101 budget, the 206, 207, and 210 are in there, but you have seen these like twice before already. So there's nothing new in there, just that we will include them in the General Appropriations Act.
Question, if I may.
Yeah.
I see that there is an industry adjustment in COLA for paramedics, but not listed for buildings and grounds. So are you anticipating those to be two separate rates moving forward?
So I think that, no, actually, I think that we'll keep them the same, but that was still covered under that amount that we would, in the buildings and grounds. I think it'll be sufficient, that line item, to cover that. Let me go back and take a look at that one. Let me find, if anyone has 771, oh, here it is, 770. So we're at 15.4 right now, and I don't know where, I have projected at 22. We'll see. Not sure about that. And I just bumped it slightly to 2023. So I think we'll be okay, but we'll be.
I'm just looking at your footnotes where it does not recognize that 7% there.
It doesn't, you're right, because I had forgotten that was even included in that. I mean, I recalled it, but that
Yeah, I
was
just
not
wanna make sure
noted
that
down
we were
here.
Working on
Yeah.
inputting that
I mean-
information, that it's accurate.
I was, well, that's good, because we don't want paychecks to be off, so that's awesome. I think it's probably easier, too, for you. He does a really good job for us in buildings and grounds, and as well, I would take some input, please, on, how you'll do that with payroll, because I know it's already difficult to kind of partition those out, so if
I
another.
don't know if it would be better one way or the other. It's whatever this board chooses.
Okay. Well, you get to take a look at it tomorrow and think about it. Like I said, this is the,
I'll be tomorrow.
well, this is the first time you're seeing it, so you
This is the
can,
first time I'm seeing any of it, so and I appreciate that you did work on the elections, the health benefits in the clerk's office, because I just have not had the time to do any of those.
yeah, no problem. Let's see. So we mentioned through the 210 we've seen before. 230 is short-term rentals. Just literally took a license number and multiplied it by the amount for the requested, and again, did see the transfer out. You'll see that $20,000 transfer out, and that corresponds to the transfer in and the revenues that you'll see in the 101. In the PEG, we have very little activity there, pretty standard. And the zoning escrow fees, I am really not entirely sure why they have us budget that. We were talking about that today, because it's literally a wash. And the opioid settlement, we have had, I think, 2 years' worth of revenue in there now. So I don't know, we have, a couple thousand, 8,000 or so in fund balance, and we'll look to probably spend, we'll see what other settlements that are on the horizon. But I think we'll try to look to spend that according to the directions in 2025. So one of the things I was taking a look at is, it has to be used for things obviously from the impact of opioids or prevention of opioid abuse. So one of the things we've talked about taking a look at is supplying some businesses and restaurants in the corridor area and elsewhere with Narcan response. So if you'll start to notice, and I've just really started to notice it in the past year or two, where you see fire extinguishers in the wall or AED equipment, you'll also now see Narcan because these overdoses happen anytime, any place, and it's very hard to know. So we'll take a look at that, but again, we'll get some guidance on that because there's a lot of latitude, but there's some particular requirements with the settlement money. So, and with that, that's pretty much a review of that. You guys can take that and noodle through it in some detail. That'll be definitely back before you in November. Our regular board meeting, by the way, in November is not on a Monday, it is on a Tuesday. We moved that with the resolution at the end of 2023, and that was because of holiday that Monday. So we have two options. We can bring this back in November, we can, and possibly even have till December and pass it, or we can have, if you take a look at this over the next week or two and you say, hey, I think I would really like to have a workshop, there's some detail in there, we can do that as well. So, okay. Any large questions right now, or happy to have that and keep it and start to review it? Okay. Let's see. Well, let me know your preference if you would prefer to have a workshop or if you would just prefer to take a look at it at the November meeting.
I know I would like a workshop, especially because after November, I'll have time to actually work on the numbers better if we go straight to a public hearing at the November 12th. I don't know. I would hope I'd have time to do that, but you and I discussed a few things over the weekend when we were both working over the weekend. But I want to make sure that everything is looked at well so that we don't miss something.
Yep. All right, we may use, we couldn't use the November 2 for a workshop, so we'll see how that fits in with everyone's schedule. Because we have to pass it by December, the date, do you remember?
As a charter township, we
think
don't
it's-
abide by that 45-day rule that general laws have to, but, I mean, the sooner it's passed, the better.
I thought there was still by by December 15th.
But others needed to have it done 45 days before the end of the year.
We
Well,
have to
anyway.
send the bill in, we have to send the tax bills to be printed by
For December 1.
1. Yeah, we have to have that by mid-November.
Yeah, but you've already got the millage rate, that was set with L
Just
4029.
want to make sure that
Yeah, yeah. Let's see, with that, is there any public comment this evening? We've kind of, yep, come on up.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff Geiger, Cross Country Trail. To follow up on that, it looks like you're pushing that all back on the decision. Was that Lakes area also, is that going to be the 40,000 still? Was that the way they're going to go for the density in the zoning? Does that look like that was going to happen?
Oh, so you would want, you're in the Lakes area?
Yeah, talk to Bill and
Yeah.
everybody tomorrow.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
The other thing I did want to comment, a separate issue about the camping. I think pushing that down the road is really alienating a lot of people because it feels like their voices weren't heard. And now you've got everybody whose friends or maybe or families coming up next year trying to make plans. And now, you know, they're going to put in for their 2 weeks off or a week off ahead of time. They're going to come up and not know if they're doing it illegally, technically, or not. I think that pushing that decision off and waiting for that in a rewrite is not a wise thing for the opinion of the people that I've talked to. Everybody's really upset, and it's a personal issue, you know, with their property, because we're losing a lot of our rights, and we're losing them every day, and or every so often here in big chunks, and it really does affect everyone. So everybody does it. It's hard to enforce. Like I say, the horse farm next to us, I mean, I don't expect anybody to leave their animals out there without somebody. You know, they do a lot of, you know, different operations there, so I think that needs to be addressed, and I think pushing it off is really alienating a lot of people because it feels like they're not heard, like I say. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Have a good evening.
You as well. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, with that, we have our upcoming meeting date. Again, there's a date change for November. It's November 12th, which is a Tuesday. So just make sure you note that on your calendar. And yeah, with that, we will, if there's no objections, then we stand adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.